Hello, Blue Jays fans, and welcome back to T.O. Blue Jays. I'm your host, Aiden Smith. Well, we got off to a good spring training thus far, winning both games. One against the New York Yankees on Saturday, which we won 6-4, and one against the Boston Red Sox yesterday, where we won either 7-5 or 7-6. I can't tell you because I finished the game when it was still 5-2 in the second half of the game. But anyways, we won both games. Now, let's get this off the bat so we can move on into the future. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. said he does not want this year to be a distraction to his teammates regarding his free agency. However, he's already come out and said that he is going to take offers from all 30 teams, that he's open to all 30 teams, and he even did a New York Post uh, availability with John Heyman. Of all the people you go and speak to this early, uh, John Heyman, kind of disappointing. He liked a picture of him in the Yankees uniform on social media, and we know that earlier in the year he did the same with the Boston Red Sox with him and Soto before Soto ended up signing with the Mets. And yeah, um, it's kind of disappointing because it alludes back to my video a couple weeks ago when I'm saying for someone who says he wants to stay in Toronto a lifetime, but only we give him the biggest contract, is exactly what I was referring to because now he said that all other 29 teams will be able to give him opportunities if he thinks he give him something decent um, at the end of this coming year when he hits unrestricted free agency. So again, for someone who really says he wants to play in Toronto's whole career, why would you be listening to 29 other teams? I mean, yes, Soto did that, but he did that literally the day after he won the World Series, which is still pretty early if you ask me. Um, or no, yeah, the day after the World Series, didn't win the World Series. But again, still kind of early. Uh, but yeah, like again, it just goes back to what I was saying earlier. Even though Tani didn't put that much attention on himself, I mean, he did obviously because he's Otani, and no matter what he says, people are gonna get attention on it. But he made the team about winning and about the Dodgers hat is ab- about winning, not just himself. Whereas I think Vlad's kind of gone and made it about himself. Anyways, let's talk about the future. So, two key prospects to watch out for this spring training, and two of them have already been talked about quite a bit, are Orelvis Martinez, and if I'm saying his name wrong, I apologize. And then Alan Rodon as well. So, Alan Rodon, a left-hitting hitter, or batter, I should say, I guess, uh, who is a left fielder, and then Orelvis Martinez, a third baseman. And quite honestly, I kind of view him the same way as Vladimir Guerrero Jr. in his build and all that. I don't think he's ever had quite as much weight as Vlad at the beginning of his career, but I do think he's someone that could move over to first base eventually. But anyways, the reason I'm bringing those two guys up are because I think all the fans know who Orelvis Martinez is. Um, we had a chance that maybe we could have got his career started out a little bit earlier because we did call him up once already, but then I believe it was late, not this past year, but the year before. But then he got the 80 game suspension due to performance enhancing drugs and was not very good. And then Alan Rodon, I think we got him in a trade. I could be wrong. I honestly haven't really heard of his name until this past year in spring training. And also, I noticed that if you try to get the latest rosters uh, before MLB The Show 25 comes out, he's in the uh, on the Blue Jays roster. And apparently, Ross Atkins has said multiple times that he really believes in Alan Rodon, and I guess he's got a bit of defense on him, which is great. And he hits from the left side and he makes good contact and he has a bit of power. And I guess that's exactly the type of player that Ross Atkins likes. Now, again, I would say he probably fits a better offensive profile than he does on a defensive profile, at least from what I've seen. I could be wrong there. I mean, again, I don't really know much about this guy, but maybe he'll be someone who gets a contract extension for Ross Atkins someday. Is it too early to say that? Yes, it is. But it's good that Ross Atkins and maybe even Mark Shapiro, for all we know, actually like one of their prospects for once. So I think he's got to prove himself. And Orelvis Martinez, I think we all know about him. I think this year he's going to get a chance to come up, as well as Alan Moran. Only thing is, I think some fans believe they're going to break out of camp with the Blue Jays. I really don't see that happening unless something crazy happens. And again, as much as we want to see them do well, they've done well so far in the first two spring training games. But again, it's the first two spring training games, and yes, Rodon got a double off of Garrett Crochet. But again, these elite pitchers are not where they're going to be in a month from now or 2 months from now when we're at the beginning of the season. So while it's good, still, yes, let's not jump to conclusions yet. But let's take a look at the 40-man roster here. So we've got Chris Bassett, obviously going to be on the 26-man roster. Angel Bastardo, we got him off the uh, off the Rule 5 draft from the Boston Red Sox, so he has to be on the 25 or 26-man roster until sometime in June, I want to say. I could be wrong, but he at least needs to make the Blue Jays MLB roster. So when I say 26-man roster, I'm saying MLB roster. Jose Barrios obviously going to be on the opening day roster. Jake Bloss, no, he will not be, but he's going to definitely start in the minors. Now, I think he's another key to watch. One, if Yariel Rodriguez is terrible and Max Scherzer can't be a starter, it kind of looks like Yariel Rodriguez is not going to be great unless he can change what's going on in the spring. And even if those two situations don't happen where Yariel Rodriguez is still your fourth, fifth starter, because he can't opt him down, so the best they could do is trade him, which I doubt would happen. And the other option the Blue Jays have would be to make him a reliever. So the other reason I see Jake Bloss coming up this year, which I do think he will, is either as a 26 man, or sorry, as a September call up when they expand the roster, or more likely if they were going to make a trade or an injury. I'd trade for a pitcher. Like, let's just say things are going bad. You trade Chris Bassett, you call up Jake Bloss. Ryan Burr, I think he's probably going to make the team. So let's see. One, two, three, four. So Ryan Burr, Bound Francis. If the season started today, he's your number four or maybe number five starter, depending on where you're comfortable with putting Max Scherzer. So there again, one, two, three, four, five. Yimi Garcia, obviously going to make the MLB roster. Six, Kevin Gosman. Seven, Chad Green. Eight, Jeff Hoffman. Nine, um, Brandon Little. 10, Alek Manoah. I thought he was injured still. I could be wrong, but I guess he's on the 40-man roster, obviously, but I don't think he's going to make the opening day team. Obviously, he may not be coming back for until half a year, but he seems pretty confident in himself, which is good. That's what we want. We want Alek Manoah to come back as much as we need Bo Bichette to come back. Zach Pop is most likely going to make the opening day roster. He may be out of options as far as I'm aware. So if he's on the opening day roster, that would be very, very surprising. They would probably have to outright him. So again, Chris Bassett, Angel Bastardo, Jose Barrios, Ryan Burr, that's four, Francis five, Garcia six, Gosman seven, Chad Green eight, Hoffman 9, Brandon Little, I'm going to say most likely 10, Zach Pop 12, Yerly Rodriguez 13. Now, Brandon Little may not make it up if they bring in Nick Sandlin. I mean, it's hard to say. I'm just looking at 13 guys. So I guess Angel Bastido, I guess you could always trade him as well. It's hard to say, but we at least know Chris Bassett, Jose Barrios, Bowden Francis, Yimi Garcia, Kevin Gosman, that's five guys. Chad Green, six. Hoffman, seven. And Zach Pop, eight. Yeled Rodriguez, nine. Nick Sandlin, 10. Max Scherzer, 11. Eric Swanson, most likely, 12. So I guess that leaves a couple spots open, maybe only one open if you're doing 13 pitchers and 13 um, fielders. So catchers, obviously, we're going to have Tyler Heineman and Alejandro Kirk. Tyler Heineman, I think this year they're going to put a lot of pressure on Kirk. So again, I think part of the problem for Kirk last year was the timing of when he had his baby. He was going to play in the World Baseball Classic. Didn't get to go to the World Baseball Classic. He barely made the spring training in time. So I think last year he kind of had a lot of things going on with his daughter that I think this year uh, he's going to bounce back and be the player we expect him to be. Tyler Heineman, I think exactly what we expect him to be, a backup catcher. He seems pretty close with Ernie Clement and David Schneider and those guys, so I think that's good. So yeah, definitely those two guys will be on the MLB roster at the beginning of the year. Bo Bichette, I mean, again, another star, superstar, whatever you want to say, that we could potentially lose and most likely lose. Now, I do think there's a world, not a big world, not a high probability world, but I think there is a world where if Bo Bichette shows he is still Bo Bichette and the Blue Jays can do something of significance this year, that he would resign. Not maybe long term, but at least a 2 or 3 year extension to kind of show the teams he is on the right track and then go out, I don't know, 28, because I think, or 29 maybe, and go assign a big deal then. Because let's be honest, look at Bregman. He just got 6 years. I think it was what, something close to a Sprayer contract, or maybe even more. I honestly can't remember the number off the top of my head, but he got a pretty big contract for a guy who's already 30 and or 31 even. You're gonna be 31 this year, and on the wrong side of 30s, people like to say it's a 30 some friggin' ancient number. So I think Bo Bichette, realistically, if we gave him a high contract for a 2 or 3 year extension um, to stay with the Blue Jays and kind of stay healthy and kind of audition for other teams, I think there is a possibility. There's a possibility you could sign him 10 years. Again, I don't think it's a high probability, but there is a probability that it could happen. So I think obviously Bo Bichette is definitely going to be on the opening day roster. Ernie Clement, unless he gets injured. So knock on wood, he doesn't. He's going to make the opening day roster. Andres Jimenez, opening day roster. I think it's interesting. His interview on Saturday, he seemed like business. Uh, he didn't seem like a goofy type of player, which I've discussed before. He seems like he really means business. So I think that's really good for the Blue Jays. And obviously, coming from the Cleveland Guardians, a team that's fallen short in the playoffs themselves, obviously done better than the Blue Jays. I think he probably has a bit of determination there. So I think that's really good to have him on your team. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., obviously, going to be on the opening day roster. So those 6 spots already. Leo Jimenez, most likely not. Aroldis Martinez, what I see happening with Aroldis Martinez is the Blue Jays, Ross Atkins, Mark Shapiro know how to prolong guys under control. So what I could see them doing is I think there's some date in April. Like I think someone has to kind of play a certain amount of time in the minor leagues, like maybe like 3 or 4 weeks or something. Maybe even I guess maybe a little bit longer. We're going into April here, but maybe it's like I don't know. I think they have to have a certain amount of time in the minor leagues before you can call them up to the big leagues, where uh, it's not really considered a full year of service or something, where you basically get extended time out of them in MLB, which is what they did with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. I see them doing that with Aroldis Martinez, where you don't call him up right away, uh, so that way you have him for a longer period of time before you have to sign him to an extension as well. So I personally think that Aroldis Martinez has a chance to come up mid-April on the team. I don't think it's necessarily a high chance because I really think that Ernie Clement's going to be your third baseman, Bo Bichette short, Andres Jimenez at second, and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. at first. And seeing how Ernie Clement's a right-handed hitter, you don't really need Aurelvis Martinez to be your right-handed hitter on face the lefties when you already have Ernie Clement. Will Wagner, he's going to definitely break camp with the team. So I would definitely say you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plus the 2 catchers. So there's 7 already. So there's 6 more guys that will be again, if we're going 13-13, six more guys still to be on the 26-man roster on opening day. So excuse me, Will Wagner will definitely be on the opening day roster. Um, they talked about um, he will he might lead off against righties and Springer against lefties. I personally don't think Springer should be leading off anymore. Um, I really don't. I think moving Springer into the sixth spot last year was good. I think he was willing to do it. I honestly think Springer's more willing to move down in the lineup than Schneider's willing to move him down the lineup. I personally don't think it's a Springer thing. I know, Kevin Barker and Jeff Blair talk about, well, at least Kevin Barker talks about how Springer makes so much money. It looks really bad if you have him in the sixth spot. At this point, you got to do what you got to do to win. And by the way, listen to Jeff Blair and Kevin Barker on Sportsnet. They have their own show right now. They're going to be 12-1, and I think once the regular season starts, they're going to get their main time back, and they'll be on the radio and all that. They're really good to listen to. Kevin Barker did play for the Blue Jays. I think he made it to the Blue Jays roster. I know he definitely played in the minor leagues in the Blue Jays system, but he's great to listen to. He's married to Hazel May. Jeff Bear's been a writer for a long time, and now obviously with Sportsnet. So definitely give them a listen. They give a lot of insight. And even Kevin Barker was saying the other day, because uh, him and Jeff Blair were talking to Dan Schulman, who I pretty sure is not related to, or excuse me, they're talking to Ben Schulman, who's not related to Dan Schulman. And basically, Kevin Barker was saying, like, there's four spots, third base, and basically all the outfield. If you don't put Santander at the designated hitter position, you got, or if you do rather, you got four spots. So third base and the outfield open, at least on opening day. And he was saying, like, you have a $240 million contract, you still don't know where guys are going to go. It's pretty bad. So again, like Will Wagner could very well play right field. I think he's even played left field. Same for Addison Barger. But we know for sure Bochette, Ernie Clement, Andreas Jimenez, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. are going to be your opening day uh, infielders, at least in my opinion. Again, the only way I don't see Ernie Clement getting the third base spot on opening day is if the face a tough righty, and for some reason you want Will Wagner in there. And for that matter, they might put Will Wagner, not Springer. That's unlikely, but again, they see Will Wagner as I think basically hitting righties until he can prove he can also hit the lefties. So there we go. So we got six guys plus Will Wagner, so that's going to be seven guys. Um, and then basically the outfielder Stuart Burrow not going to be on the team. Jonathan Clase not going to be on the team. Joey Loperfido is definitely going to be on the team. Anthony Santander obviously going to be on the team. So now you're at 11 guys. And then, or is that only, I can't do math quickly, guys. I'm sorry. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven. So then Joey Loperfido and Anthony Santander would be nine. And then, so that would give you actually four more guys. Davis Schneider is going to be on the opening day roster. Again, unless something crazy happens, Davis Schneider will be on the team. So there we are at 10. And then George Springer, obviously. So there we are at 11. So two more guys. Now, Dalton Varsho may travel with the team. I doubt they'll have him activated because he is getting some at bats. And now David or John Schneider was asked about would Dalton Varsho get to play DH at the beginning of the year? And he basically wanted to say no desperately, but what he said is, well, we got to do what's best for the team, and I think Varsho's got a better chance of helping us win defensively than having a few at bats. And we want to make sure he's comfortable first and foremost. So maybe some reps, but again, we got to do what's best for the team. So basically, trying to say he doesn't believe in Dalton Varsho's ability to be a good hitter and not play in the outfield. So basically, the only way Varsho's getting in there if he can play the outfield. Now they might DH him a little bit just to get his reps up before they bring him into the outfield. But again, the likelihood of him making the opening day roster and playing in the lineup are very slim. I think what happens is he travels with the team, he sees the pitching, he takes reps in live pitching, Um, but he doesn't actually play with the team. I think he just keep him on the injured list until he's actually ready to come and play, in my opinion. So I still think um, that there's two more spots available. So again, Springer, Schneider, Santander, and Joey Loperfido as your four for sure outfielders. I see a world where Nathan Lucas comes in, uh, and there's 12 spots, and then I can see a world where Barger comes in, and there's your 13 spots. Now, there could also be a world where Nathan Lucas or Barger don't start the year with the club, and although Nathan Lucas may be out of options, I could be wrong there. And then you have one of these other guys come in, and you have 14 pitchers and 12 uh, fielders. Um, Now, the interesting thing is Ryan Yarbrough is not actually on the 40-man day roster, so he's a non-roster invite to the spring training. He signed a minor league deal, and another one that actually kind of interesting. So Jacob Barnes, Andrew Bash. I'm pretty sure Jacob Barnes got an invite to spring training. Andrew Bash, Lazaro Estrada, don't know much about him. Brandon Fisher is definitely signed to a deal. Mason Flaherty was invited to spring trainer. Brain Fisher, or Mason Flaherty, yeah, he's in spring training. Brain Fisher's in spring training. Adam Kolfstein's in spring training. Ryan or Richard Lovelady is in spring training. So is Ryan Yarborough. But I'm actually not seeing um, Amir Garrett, which is surprising. Unless they've already non-rostered him or designated him. I could be, let's see, unless he's under active. No, that's interesting. Maybe they already got rid of him. You know what? Let's find out. No, he's in the Jays organization. So, anyways, that's interesting. Um, and then also interesting though is that Rodon's not on a 40-man roster. So yeah, unless they non-roster one of these guys, I personally think uh, I honestly think that Alan Rodon is a September call up, or if David Schneider's really doing poorly, if there's an injury, then you would bring up Alan Rodon. Rodon, I honestly could be saying his last name wrong too. I could also see another world where, Nathan Lucas is definitely going to break up with the team, but let's just say, the outright him, put him on waivers, someone else picks him up. Um, Again, Alan Roden definitely does not break camp with the team. Um, but I definitely think he comes up this year at some point. I just think it's either going to be injury related, poor performance related, or just comes up in September. But honestly, I think this year we're trying to win. First and foremost, I don't think there's any point rushing him because let's be honest, next year there's going to be more spots available if a bunch of these guys aren't here. Um, So I think definitely next year is going to be a year where we're more likely going to see, unless a miracle happens, that they're going to see more guys come up. Um, and again, I honestly think that Aurelvis Martinez could very well become a first baseman in the future. Um, I don't know if that's any discussion the team's had. I think right now they just want to get him ready to get hitting at MLB ready level pitching, which again is why I think he can come up earlier. But again, like Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro, no transparency there. Uh, and that's probably why they never bring Marcus Stroman back, who apparently doesn't want to be with the Yankees now either because he says he's not a sixth man. He's a starting pitcher and he's not going to the bullpen. So interesting to see what happens there. So again, Tyler Heineman, Alejandro Kirk, Asim Barger, Bo Bichette, Ernie Clement, Andres Jimenez, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Will Wagner. There you are at 8 guys, and then most likely Joey Loperfido, Nathan Lucas, Anthony Santander, David Schneider, and George Springer. There you are at 13. And then obviously once Dalton Varsho comes up, something's going to happen. So that will be the interesting thing because if they go 14 pitchers and 12 hitters or fielders. Um, and then Dalton Varsho comes up, you're already kind of doing something funny uh, with, you have to bring someone down unless you send a pitcher down. But if you do 13 and 13, like, it's going to be interesting because I feel like some of these guys are starting to run out of options. And then at that point, you kind of have to outright them. So there's only so many things you can do when you outright someone, put them on waivers. You can release them uh, and they have to pass waivers. You can put them on irrevocable waivers. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I honestly think this year's the last year we get to see David Schneider as a Blue Jay. I really, really doubt he finishes the team or he finishes on the team this year. At the end of the year, I think he's going to be with somewhere else. Uh, and maybe a change of scenery is what he needs. But unless something miraculous happens for him, and I think everyone likes David Schneider. I don't think anyone wants to see David Schneider go or have something bad happen to him. I think he kind of won our fanship last year when he broke out with the Blue Jays and he just crushed Boston for whatever reason in his very first series in the MLB. Uh, yeah, I just it's hard for me to imagine that David Schneider is going to finish here on the Blue Jays. Um, it's tough to say. It's hard to say, but I really doubt it. Again, especially with if you got, I think the Blue Jays obviously believe in Joey Lapafito. Uh, Getting him in the Kikuchi trade with Houston. I think the Blue Jays like Nathan Lucas, Anthony Santander, George Springer, Dalton Varsho. Like there's already five guys. Now obviously Santander's gonna be your DH, but then when you had two catchers, there's seven. So now you got six infielders. And again, that's if you do 13-13. So we got Bichette, Clement, Andres Jimenez Vlad, and then most likely Asen Barger and Will Wagner. And if you want to start calling some of these other guys up to come and help your team, you're gonna have to make some hard decisions. Um, to get rid of the guys who are out of options and can no longer help your team. And that could be trade, releasing, all sorts of things that are options to make room to call up some of these guys. And again, another thing too is, you know, Alan Rodon, if they want him to come up, they have to non-roster one of these guys. They have to remove him from the 40-man roster to make room for him on the 40-man roster. But yeah, I think this year, I think honestly, in my perfect world, Bo Bichette at short leads off, Andres Jimenez at second, Vlad batting third, Santander batting fifth, um, Springer batting sixth, Kirk, if he's doing well, batting seventh, Will Wagner or Ernie Clement batting eighth, and then I guess Joey Lopperfield or Nathan Lucas or one of these guys batting ninth in the outfield, in whatever position that is. I'm gonna say I personally like Joey Lopperfield. I can see him being in center field or left field to start the year. Anthony Santander being the designated hitter, and then Will Wagner or Essen Barger being in right field or even left field. Um, and then who's also not on the 40-man roster is Miles Straw. So there's another interesting um, aspect too. Obviously, the Blue Jays had no intention with Miles Straw really being on the team, but he's pretty good defensively, so he could even make the 40-man roster by the end of spring training as well. So I could really see even David Schneider being in left field, and then Joey Lopperfield in center field, and Springer in right field, and Anthony Santander at the DH. Springer could possibly even left field, and Nathan Lucas in right field. I think there's lots of opportunities. Again, the outfielder's kind of scattered right now. Obviously, once Ellen Barstow comes back, he's going to be in center field. Anthony Santander could be in left field, but I honestly don't see that happening. I think he's going to primarily be a DH, batting behind Vlad in the fourth spot. And then if he is in fielding, he'll be in right field. And maybe him and Springer just do right field both. Again, there's so much. And again, for a $240 million contract, it's our roster. It's just crazy to not know who's playing where yet in so many positions, third and the outfield, and even DH for that matter. But one thing that does kind of pique my mind a little bit is that I didn't realize technically, technically, there is actually floor cap in the MLB because apparently the Miami Marlins have not spent enough money. So Miami Marlins have actually spent less money than the Oakland Athletics. Can you believe it? That if they don't get a contract in place that is a big chunk of change, they will actually be below the Player Association's base salary cap, floor cap. That is basically the required teams to spend a certain amount of money on players. That they will be fined or something from the Players Association. So it's not an MLB set cap, but technically it's a Players Association cap for the floor cap that you have to spend at least a certain amount of money. So I wonder if there's a world where the Blue Jays, not necessarily this year or even at the MLB trade deadline if they're doing awful, if the Marlins would be willing to take on the remainder of George Springer's contract, and maybe we kind of have to swing the deal with a little bit something else because they need to have a certain amount of spending, and maybe they kind of use Springer as as a coach for some of the younger guys coming up for their system. I wonder if that is a world that could come. It's hard to say, but I guess I play a lot of MLB to show, so I'm just constantly thinking about what would I do if I was rebuilding the Blue Jays in real life. It was just something that came up. I honestly don't know how it came up, but yeah. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching, and as always, go Jays go. See you in the next video. We'll talk about more spring training. Take care and go Jays go.